Hey, it's me, the Quenchies. I'm that late afternoon craving you just can't shake. Wait, what's that? Welch's Grape Aid? No! Made with real fruit and no added sugar, nothing answers the call of the Quenchies like Grape Aid. Got the Quenchies? Grab a Grape Aid in your juice aisle.
Rated T to M. Hey, want to hear a PC Game Pass ad? I'll take your silence as a yes. Want new games on day one like Call of Duty Black Ops 6 or Stalker 2? I thought so. How about unlocking all the League of Legends champions when you link your Riot Games account? All for one low monthly price? Well, guess what? We got you. Learn more at xbox.com/PC Game Pass or click the banner. Stalker 2 available November 20th, 2024. Game catalog varies by region and over time. And that's the end of the script.
All right. Welcome back.
Fit Nation.
All right, let's welcome to the Misfit Nation podcast, Scott DeLuzio, author of Surviving Son, host of DriveOn podcast, and Army veteran. What else do you do, Scott? I mean, you have everything in the books here.
Yeah. Well, first off, thanks for having me on the show. Like you said, I'm an Army veteran. I served in Afghanistan in 2010. Wrote the book Surviving Son based on my experiences in Afghanistan, what took place there, and afterwards, after coming back home, and it's the struggles I dealt with after that. And a lot of the struggles are things that you'd kind of expect of a person coming back home, but mine in some circumstances were kind of unique. So I wrote about that. Started the podcast, DriveOn podcast, a couple of years ago, when I started noticing, all the issues that the veterans were having after coming back home, and realizing that I wasn't the only one who was struggling with coming back home. And so I wanted to have a platform where we could talk to other veterans about what they've gone through, what's worked for them, what didn't work for them, and provide resources to help out the veterans and let them know that they're not alone in their struggle, and that there are options out there for them that can help them out.
Awesome. Tell us a little about your call to service. You were in Connecticut National Guard or Vermont National Guard. I'm not sure. There's two different listings on your thing, but I think your brother was Vermont National Guard. You were Connecticut.
That's correct. Yeah. So
Okay.
So my brother and I, we were both raised in a very patriotic family. And so growing up, we looked up and respected the military and law enforcement, first responders, all those kind of people. So that was us growing up. And then 9/11 happened, and I think, like a lot of other Americans, we were pretty pissed off at what had happened. My brother was still in high school at the time. I was in college, and I had considered just dropping out of school right then and there and just joining the military, because I knew there was going to be some sort of military response, and I wanted to be a part of it. I slept on that decision. I decided that I'd finish what I started with college. If there was going to be some sort of military response, it probably wasn't going to be a quick in and out like Desert Storm was. It was probably going to be something that took place over a longer period of time, and it would likely be something that would still be around after I got out of college. So that's what I did. My younger brother joined the Vermont Army National Guard when he started going to college up there. And he met a guy who was in the National Guard and talked to him about it. Sounded like something interesting that he would want to do. And so he joined first, and like pretty much overnight, he became one of those guys that we looked up to growing up, and, all my life growing up, he's a little brother. Right. And then, I'm supposed to be the one that he's looking up to. And now all of a sudden I'm looking up to him, which was great. I was extremely proud of him. I thought it was an incredibly, selfless thing that he did by joining the military the way he did. And then about a year after he joined, I started hearing these reports in the news that the military was struggling to meet their recruiting numbers. And that started to piss me off. I was like, what happened to all those people? 9/11 wasn't that long ago. What happened to all those people who were ready to, go kick some ass after 9/11? And then I had a realization that I'm one of those people, and I still haven't done anything. I still haven't served. I haven't signed up for anything. I didn't do anything, other than graduate college, and like, who cares? Like that's not really the service that I was looking for here. And so I said, you know what, that's it. I'm done making excuses. I have no reason not to join. I'm young enough, I'm fit enough, I'm perfectly capable to join. And so that's what got me to join. That, and if my little brother can do it, then there's no way I'm going to let him one up.
Can't let that happen.
No way. So yeah, that's kind of like the call to service where that came from, and how I got into the military.
And did you both join infantry, or you infantry, him support?
Yeah, no, he was infantry. He went infantry first, and again, I wasn't going to let him one up me on that. So I had to do that too.
Awesome. Both 11 Bravos.
Yep.
All right, awesome. So where were you in Afghanistan in 2010?
Yeah, so we were both in Eastern Afghanistan. He was in a province called Paktia province, and I was in Nangarhar province in an area called Torkham, right along the Pakistan border. And that was, for people familiar with the region, that's near where the Khyber Pass is. And it was a major border crossing between Pakistan and Afghanistan, and where a lot of the NATO supplies would come through, because a lot of people don't realize it, but Afghanistan being a landlocked country, a lot of our supplies were coming through on cargo ships, and the closest port was in Pakistan. So they would offload the ships in Pakistan and then drive the shipping containers into Afghanistan from there on the back of trucks and stuff. So we secured that border area, made sure that the trucks had safe passage into the country, and were able to get to where they needed to go. That was our primary mission while we were there. We also did other missions where we would do some patrols around the local villages and stuff to kind of get to know the area, know the people who were there. But yeah, so we're essentially in that area for the majority of the deployment. We did do some missions where we flew out to other villages that were a little bit more remote than where we were. There was no roads or anything, and it would have taken probably weeks to walk to these villages. So we flew out on helicopters and made our lives a little bit easier. Not to say that it was an easy job, but it was much easier than having to walk all that way.
There's a lot of lovely places in Afghanistan where walking to them is not fun at all. And
no,
I applaud your command's use of helicopters or lift services to get you to places a lot easier than walking or even driving the treacherous roads there at that time. I got to Afghanistan about a month after, in September 2010, I got there. So okay. 60 days back from Korea, I went right to Afghanistan, and two different worlds. It was kind of crazy going from Korea, Fort Campbell, 60 days into Afghanistan. And then here, wow, welcome to this. This is your new life. Have at it. So yeah, we're there about the same time.
That is crazy. Yeah. To think that you have such a little downtime in between, and then all of a sudden, boom, you're in country, and right. And you're right. There's some places you definitely don't want to be walking in that country. So
yeah. Well, I believe you. Yeah, especially on the eastern side. I went back to the eastern side in 2012. I came back back less than a year, and went back as an advisor to Kunar, just north of where you were. And it was treacherous up there.
Yeah, for sure. We were very fortunate in our deployment where we didn't have a lot of engagement with the enemy in the early part of our deployment. We did have some attacks on our base and things like that took place, but we were very fortunate in our missions that we were going on that we didn't have too many engagement with the enemy until later on in the deployment, where we're going on more missions where we're going out specifically looking for specific targets and things like that, where we started getting involved with a little bit more of that. So
Yeah, that's I think about that time is when everything ramped up around 2000, right when that's this period when everything ramped up to let's go hunt and find them,
Yeah.
and get rid of them. And you got taken from your job was already hard where you were at the Working Gate or Khyber Pass. And then let's go off, change that mission set to let's go into the population and try to find the bad guys.
Right. Yeah. So it was a dual mission, and we had a lot going on. We part of that mission where we were going out to those villages was also training the Afghan army and getting them up to speed. But that was also during Ramadan, where they were hard to train as it was. But when you have a period of time where they don't eat or drink anything during the day and it's 120 plus degrees outside, like they're so hard to get to do anything for more than 15, 20 minutes at a time. So it was a very difficult task. And then going on a mission and actually have them do the work of clearing some of these houses and going through the village, it was at times almost like herding cats. Yeah.
That's a great statement right there. Herding cats, that's a perfect way to put it. And then even while you're training them, it's frowned upon for you to eat or drink in front of them because it's disrespectful. So you have to rotate away so they can't see you in order to stay hydrated, to stay keep your nutrition up. That's a tough portion too. A lot of people don't understand that while we're over there.
Yeah, exactly. And shade was very limited. So where we were trying to do the training, we tried to keep it as comfortable as possible, but it was very hard to do. So, it was not an easy job to do, but we did the best with what we had to work with. And we did go on some missions that were successful. We found some weapons and stolen Afghan army uniforms and things like that. So we got those out and took them away from the Taliban where they could have potentially used them against, the Afghan forces and even against American forces to trick their way into, hiding out in these areas. So
definitely, it's definitely a good find. And you even had the Haqqani network up there where you were as well, selling those things that they stole, and they'd sell them to other nefarious groups that were in the area to also wreak havoc on you and the Afghan army that was in that area. So good work finding that stuff and just keeping your heads above ground at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, the book that I wrote, talks a lot about this type of stuff and the types of missions that we went on and all that kind of stuff. And, I think it's an important thing to have people understand that, like what type of work we were doing over there, because, you don't really get a good sense from the evening news or anything like that. You don't get a good sense of what actually was going on the ground over there. And so, stories like this one, and there's others that have been written as well, give a better picture of what actually was happening.
Right. The evening news does look down to see what Sergeant Scott DeLuzio is doing on the ground, his team or squad, and making a difference on the ground. They look at what's happening in some palace in Kabul or some big building in Kabul where there's people are shaking hands and hugging babies and stuff. They don't care about what we were doing out in the dirt. So for the American people or even everyone in the world that just relies on the news, they need to really open their sight aperture and see what exactly all service members did over there and continue to do overseas now.
Yeah, for sure. And I encourage other people who have served in any capacity, whether they deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, or stayed stateside. I think it's important for the American public to know what it is that we do in the military and what our day-to-day is like. And so, especially if you did serve overseas, what was that like? And so maybe there were some mistakes made in the administration of some of these wars. And, if we can learn from those mistakes from the people who were there, I think that's just a good thing. And so I encourage a lot of people to write down their experiences and tell their story,
Definitely get it out there, and so others don't make the same mistakes, because history repeats itself if you don't prepare yourself.
For sure. Absolutely.
So to pivot, you wrote the book Surviving Son. We obviously know you lost your brother Stephen. Where were you at the point? Where were you at the time when this happened, and how did you get notified?
Yeah. So, I'll kind of back up a little bit there, and I'll talk about what he was up to and what his mission was like, and so his mission was another one of those missions where you go into a village, suspected Taliban activity. They'd been through this area before. They knew, kind of the layout and the capabilities of some of the people who were there, and they unfortunately they walked into an ambush, and so he was hit in that ambush. He as the first shots rang out, they kind of ran for cover and returned fire, just like you're trained to do. They did everything by the book like they're supposed to. But an enemy was able to shoot and hit him, and it killed him pretty much instantly, which made the whole mission change from a search mission where they're going and looking for the Taliban and that type of activity to now a recovery mission where now they have to recover his body and bring him out of there, because as we all know, you never leave a fallen soldier behind, and so that's what their primary objective was to get him out of there. Unfortunately, in that recovery effort, they lost another American soldier as well, and so that recovery effort got twice as difficult, because now not only didn't they have those two fallen soldiers shooting back and directing fire and all that kind of stuff, the people who were carrying them out no longer could be returning fire as well, and so that just made it exponentially more difficult for them, because now they had, if they had 4 people carrying one person, that's 10 total people who are out of a fight, out of a platoon size element. That's a significant number of people who are no longer in the fight. So that was a incredibly difficult time for them to do, and to do that recovery effort. And again, I write about that in the book as well. So anyone who wants to learn more about what took place that day, they can check that out. But when I found out, it was actually kind of a bizarre coincidence. So I was on a mission, one of these missions where we flew out to a village, a real remote area, and it was actually in like a French controlled area of the country. So the French military had a certain portion of the country, and so we were operating in that area. And at one point during the mission, I got a call on the radio saying that I needed to take my squad down to this clearing on the other side of the village and clear an area for a helicopter to land. We didn't have any idea who was coming in or whatever, but when it landed, it was an American general and 2 French soldiers who got off the helicopter. And I guess they were just there to kind of check up on what was going on, what we were up to, and what we had found in the area to gather the intelligence. And as I was the kind of senior ranking guy in that area where the helicopter landed, up until the general stepped off, I was the one who was interacting with this general, which was, as a E5 sergeant, that was a little unnerving, talking to him. So, but I did, and we're talking for a little bit and giving him kind of like the layout of what the village was like and where we found stuff and everything, and he gets a call on the radio saying that 2 American soldiers were killed in action earlier that day. And of course, I hear what was going on the radio, but no names were given or anything like that. And so I just thought, gosh, that sucks, and that's terrible. I feel bad for them and their families and everything. Come to find out that call was about my brother and the other soldier who was killed.
Wow.
And so I didn't even know at the time. As a matter of fact, I'll take that one step further. It had never even crossed my mind that was a possibility for my brother. It just was. That's just something that happens to other people. That's not going to happen to my brother. That's not going to happen to me or him. We're going to be fine. We're going to go back home. We're going to live our lives the way we planned on living them. And that was just how my mindset was at the time. So a little while after that, I got a call on the radio from our company commander, who was looking specifically for me, which, given the chain of command, that doesn't usually happen. They usually go through the chain of command and talk to your platoon sergeant or whoever, before coming straight to you. But that's not what happened. And so when that happens, it's usually you did something really good or really bad. And I didn't do anything particularly extraordinary that day. So I was like, oh shit, what did I do wrong? What did I screw up? I'm in trouble. Right. And I was rattling my brain and I was nervous as hell. But when I eventually caught up with him and linked up, he told me to come over, take a knee, and take my helmet off. Which I'm like, okay, they never tell you to take your helmet off. Like that's just like basic. Like something really bad has happened. Like what the hell is going on? And so he told me that my brother's unit was ambushed and that my brother had gotten hit. And still, at this point, I never had considered that my brother could have been killed. And so my brain went into big brother mode and tried to figure out logistics of how to get me to wherever he was so I could be there to, comfort him if he needed, blood or something like that. He could have, give him a blood donation, whatever it was that he needed. I wanted to be there for him. And then, my CO told me that he was killed. He didn't make it. And so like anyone else, I broke down. I was a complete mess. I had several soldiers who just kind of like stayed with me for a little while, just making sure that I was okay and I wasn't going to do anything stupid and hurt myself or anyone else or anything like that. So, but the problem with that was shortly after finding out that my brother was killed, about 20 minutes later, our own unit started getting attacked from the same village that we just came out of. Clearly, the Afghan army, who were in the lead clearing these buildings, did not do a great job. So we started taking small arms fire and RPG fire from this village, and so I had to put my personal issues aside and kind of stop grieving in that moment. And I had to just suck it up and get back into the fight. I had a squad that I was in charge of, and I had to be there for them and make sure that they had the leadership that they needed so that nothing happened to them. I needed to make sure that nothing happened to me, because last thing in the world I wanted was for my parents to get another knock on the door, or have my wife or my newborn son at home, grow up without me, so like that was the thoughts going through my mind. It's like, no way are they getting another one of us today. Like I was going to make damn sure that they were not going to get both of us today. And so my grief turned to just pure anger. And I just hated everybody in that country in that moment. And it was not a pretty situation for me. And it was pretty bad. I managed to hold it together enough that, I didn't do anything stupid, but, God, the thought of me just going and just killing all these random Afghans down in this village had definitely crossed my mind. I didn't do anything, crazy like that, but it crossed my mind. And I was that angry that I could have probably convinced myself to do something stupid like that if I didn't have, people back home relying on me and soldiers to lead.
Yeah, that's another thing we spoke about earlier, that the public doesn't understand what we go through. In that moment, you were in a world of emotions. You just lost your brother, and then you're getting attacked by basically the same element that attacked him, just in a different region. And now what do? Did you go ballistic and take out every person in there, or like you said, hold it together as much as possible, bring your men home, and then live to fight another day? And that's something no one understands, that emotion or that adrenaline rush, anger rush, whatever you want to call it in that moment.
Right. Yeah. And I remember even looking at some of our interpreters who I was friends with and looking at them like, what the hell is your problem that you couldn't be the one who sacrificed your life for your country? And we had to have people like my brother come here and get killed. And I was like, this is bullshit. Like we can't, we're the ones who were coming over here and dying, and this guy's still alive. And the craziest thing is, like, afterwards I felt like such a complete jackass for feeling that way about these people, because I mean, they were my friends. Like I made friends with these guys, and like, they didn't do anything wrong. It's not their fault. And I've since talked to them and everything, and we're all good. But I just the anger that flowed through me at that time, and I think everyone understood what was going on and everything. But it was just not a good situation for me.
Definitely, it's horrible. And I'm guessing at this point, did they fly you to meet up with him at either a Bagram or something to escort him home, or what happened?
Yeah. So right after that firefight, there was a helicopter came and landed and took me and several other people who had been wounded that day, and we flew out and we went to Bagram, and it was actually the same helicopter that I had helped land earlier that day, because it had the same general on the helicopter. And so he was sitting across from me it was a Black Hawk. So if you're familiar with the seats there, they kind of face each other. He was sitting directly across from me. He's like, "Aren't you the sergeant who I met down in that village?" And I was like, "Yeah, that was me." And the two soldiers that you got a call for on the radio, that one of them was my brother. And so he was like, he couldn't believe the coincidence from that, which I still can't believe it either. It's just kind of bizarre, out of all the thousands of soldiers who were in the country at the time, like that I happened to be there for that. But anyway, so we landed in Bagram, and I talked to the leadership there, our brigade command, and I told them that I wanted to escort my brother's body the entire way home. I wanted to be with him from leaving Afghanistan through the time that he came home in America. And they told me that I couldn't. They said I could escort him as far as Kuwait, but then I'd have to continue my way home, and we'd have to kind of go separate ways. And going back to that whole never leave a fallen soldier, I felt like not only am I leaving a fallen soldier, but I'm leaving my little brother, with strangers. And that it just tore me up, and I couldn't wrap my head around it. And it just really frustrated me that they weren't going to allow me to travel the whole way with him. But the brigade commander, he told me, what good am I doing for him with staying with him? I'm going to be much more good to my parents and my wife and my son when I eventually make it back home. And so he said, fast track it and get home as quick as you can. And so that's what I ended up doing. I followed him to Kuwait. We managed to get on the same flight to get to Kuwait. And from there, I continued on my way home, and I think I made it home in record time. Like, nobody makes it. If you ever traveled from Afghanistan, it's usually a pretty lengthy process, but I was home. Let's see. So he died on the 22nd. I think I was home on the 24th. So wow. It was a pretty quick time period. Like it was one flight after another, and I just got off of one, got onto the next, and it's a long way, and there obviously layovers and stuff in between, flights, but it took a little while, but I made it home probably about as quick as anyone has ever made it home.
And that's got to be a record. Less than a week. That's a record there for Afghanistan. Yeah. Usually, you got to take stops north, then south, then east, and west, and get there somehow. Hopefully, you get on the plane, and you probably hit everyone right on time somehow by the grace of God, I guess. Yeah, and I think they probably knew my circumstance and my situation too, and they wanted to make sure I got home for the funeral and for my family and everything like that too. So they probably bumped me ahead of the line in some of the flights. So, that in a way worked out in my favor, but at the same time, it still didn't sit right with me that I couldn't be with him. And the other thing that was hard. So when I got to Bagram, I couldn't call home. When you have a military death like that, you're on a communications blackout, and nobody can call home. And so I couldn't call my parents, I couldn't call my wife, I couldn't call anybody to talk to them, because they, at that point, just based on the time difference, they didn't know whether or not my parents had been notified, and whether any family back home knew about my brother's death. And the last thing they wanted to do is have them find out through a phone call or a Facebook message or something like that. So all the communication was blacked out for a period of time until we figured out that my parents had been notified. But it wasn't until I got to Kuwait that I was actually able to make a call the following morning, to make a call to my parents and my wife and let them know that I was on my way home, that I was safe and everything like that. But it was such a lonely feeling, because, I was with other
soldiers, but I didn't know any of them. And so it was like I was in a crowded room of strangers all the time, and it was a very lonely feeling, especially when all I wanted to do was just talk to my parents or my wife or people like that. And there was nobody that I could talk to. Nobody knew what I was going through. No, there was a handful of people who knew, but it was no one I could really have a conversation with or whatever. And it was just a really isolated time. Like I just felt like I was sitting on an island by myself almost.
Wow. And then every time I went to Bagram, I just got angry all the time, because you go from being on the front lines like you were, and then you see the people in Disney World there just having a great time and acting like it's not even a war going on. And then your situation, it's even compounded, because you're going there with a heavy heart, a heavy head, and you see these guys and gals just walking around in shorts and hanging out, and it's a cool day here. It's awesome. Great.
Yeah.
No, it's not. It's really not.
Well, and I was actually like the opposite way when we were coming into Afghanistan, because Bagram was our first stop in Afghanistan. And then we went to Jalalabad, and then we went to Torkham, where we were stationed for the majority of the deployment. But when we first landed in Bagram, I was like, well, if this is what Afghanistan is going to be like, this is not going to be that bad. And then we got to Jalalabad, and it wasn't bad, but it wasn't as good as Bagram. So I was like, okay, well, we're out a little ways. And so, yeah, so it's not that bad. And then we got to our fob, and, that kind of changed everything.
My whole outlook changes.
I was like, oh crap. They sugarcoated this an awful lot.
They set you up and then kill you. Crush your soul.
Well, that's the Army for you, right?
Definitely. So from this experience, did you have to go back to Afghanistan, or did they let you stay home and with your family, or how'd that work out?
Yeah, so I was able to stay home. At my brother's funeral, the governor of the state of Connecticut was there, and she said that she told our family that she was going to make sure that I didn't have to go back over there. And for people who are familiar with the National Guard, they fall under the state command, which the governor is a kind of commander in chief of the National Guard. And so she was able to, I guess, make that call and make that order that I didn't have to go back. So that was good, because I don't think I was in the right place in my mindset to be going back over there. It would have taken an even bigger emotional toll on me than it already did, and I don't think I would have been able to manage that. Being over there, I needed to be home. I needed to be with family, and I knew that if I did go back over there, it would totally destroy my parents and my family, because they've already lost one son, and now they're going to be even more worried that they're going to lose another one. And so it was just a really really good, fortunate thing that I didn't have to go back. So
I was about to bring up the emotional toll on you is one thing, but your mom and dad, that toll would have been compounded, because we just lost our youngest son. Now our oldest son's going right back to the same area. Well, they wouldn't have slept. They wouldn't have slept for the rest of the entire deployment.
No.
And you, like you said, you would have been in just a mess over there. Probably would have been put in staff, because you wouldn't have been useful on the ground anyway.
Right. Yeah. And I knew that about myself too. I knew that I wasn't going to be very useful over there. I knew my my leadership was not going to be what it needed to be anymore. I held it together for that one firefight as best as I could, but it would have taken a lot out of me to continue pushing forward. Not to mention that I had also injured myself on that last mission as we were exiting off the helicopters. As we were landing the night before on that last mission, it was nighttime, and so we had night vision goggles. Depth perception's all screwed up with night vision, and I was given the green light to go, and I was the first one to step off, and I'm wearing 100 pounds of crap on myself, between body armor, weapons, ammo, and everything else, and we had our rucksacks with extra food and water and all that kind of stuff, so easily over 100 pounds of stuff that I was carrying. And I stepped off, and the helicopter hadn't quite landed yet. It was still about 3-4 feet off the ground, and falling down onto uneven rocky terrain, I totally busted up my knee, and so that was really bothering me. I couldn't run. I couldn't jump or, do any of the things that you normally would have done. Carrying extra weight like a body armor and things like that would not have been something I would have been able to do. So I would have been pretty useless if I went back anyways. So another reason why it was a good thing I didn't go.
So hopefully that healed. Hopefully you didn't let the Army operate on it or anything, and you were able to keep your knee and not have it cut off by them. So this
funny thing is I went to the VA to get it looked at, and the doctor who was inspecting it and everything, he's like, oh yeah, it looks like you just kind of strained it. Just take some Motrin and stay off of it for a couple weeks. And I was like this is, so I ended up fortunately I had a civilian job as well, where I still had my own private insurance, and so I went to a civilian doctor to get a second opinion, and he's like, no, your knee is screwed up, you need surgery. So so it was like that. And so I was like, you know what, I'm not even gonna go through the VA and deal with that crap anymore. I'm gonna go take care of it on my own. And so once when I did, it put me in a position where my recovery for that would have taken me through the end of my enlistment, if I was to stay in. And so I would have been walking on crutches the entire rest of my enlistment. And so obviously I was not going to be training with the other infantry soldiers and rucking around in the woods or doing any of that kind of stuff. So whenever I would go to training after that, I felt completely useless. I was sitting there watching them go off and do all the things that they're supposed to do. And I couldn't do anything. I physically couldn't do anything. So that was affecting my mental health as well, because I was like this, I just feel so useless going into this training and not being able to do anything. So I looked into, ways of me possibly getting out of the military early. I didn't think a medical discharge would be possible because I was going to eventually recover, and it wasn't like a permanent thing. But I also knew that having lost my brother, that was under consideration. And so where the title of the book comes from, Surviving Son, there's an Army regulation called Surviving Sons and Daughters, which has a provision for discharges for soldiers who lost a relative the way I did in combat or whatever. So, so I use that Surviving Sons and Daughters to get out a little bit early from my enlistment. And, that I think ultimately was the right decision, because again, I was getting paid to go and sit there and not do anything and just feel useless. I wasn't teaching anyone or showing anyone how to do anything because I couldn't do it myself. And it would have brought me to the end of my enlistment, and it would have, I wouldn't have really been useful at all in that time period. So I figured, step aside, clear the way for their junior soldier to step up into my position and take over, and hopefully they could move on and do the job that needs to be done.
I think that's probably the best decision for you and them at that point. And I guess this is where you started learning about the evil of the transition. The mind has a way of playing tricks on you once you leave the boots and suits behind, the boots and uniform behind, and you left the war. And now a lot of soldiers, a lot of sailors, a lot of servicemen come home. They don't know what to do with their hands at this point. And it becomes an evil mind, and the darkness can easily set in. And I think that's the premise of DriveOn. And of course, it's in your book as well. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So, and it definitely did. Those demons kept creeping in. When I put in the paperwork for my discharge, it was one of those things where it wasn't an automatic thing. They had to go through several levels of approval, like any other government nonsense. And so I didn't know exactly when it was going to get approved. But one night I went to bed, still technically a soldier. The next morning I woke up and I got a phone call from my platoon sergeant, and he said, paperwork's been approved. You're done. You're out. And so it was like a light switch. There was no transition assistance or anything like that. I went to bed one one night and woke up the next morning and I was out, and it was that quick. All I had left to do was just, turn in any remaining equipment that I might have had, and I was done. There was no send-offs. There's no closure really. It was literally like a light switch, just flipping it off. And that affected me in a way that I didn't expect it to, because, I had that identity as a soldier for almost 6 years at that point. And then all of a sudden I don't have that identity, and it's just poof, it's gone. And that affected me in a way that I didn't expect it to, because then I wasn't really satisfied with the job that I had at the time. I didn't really like that. So I couldn't really call myself, whatever it was that I was doing at that time, I couldn't really call myself anything. I couldn't call myself a soldier. I couldn't call myself I was barely even a father, because I was just a shell of a person there. Like I wasn't really the best that I could be with that. And so I felt like I had no sense of purpose or nowhere to belong. I had no identity really. And so that was difficult for me to try to reconcile all of that. But in addition, I still had the anger issues that I was talking about when, after my brother was killed. I just would get angry at just about everything. All the little things would just set me off. And it was one of those things where I was like, I'll be okay. I just need some time, and I'll suck it up and I'll deal with it. But after a few months went by, I still wasn't getting any better. If anything, I was getting worse. And my wife and I both kind of sat down one night and we were like, what, something has to change. And I agreed. And I said, I'm going to just go and get some help. Go talk to somebody. I ended up calling the vet center, and they set up a time for me to meet with a counselor, and we met regularly and kind of worked through some of the problems I was going through. And it was good to just be able to talk about it in a safe, comfortable location where I knew it wasn't going to get back to, anybody else outside of those four walls, and so it was a good opportunity for me to release some of that pressure that had been building up. And like you said, the DriveOn podcast was born out of a need that I saw in the veteran community, where there are people who were taking their own lives. People that I served with took their own lives. They're struggling with addiction and homelessness and all sorts of these kind of issues that there are solutions for, and they're way better solutions than however a lot of people are dealing with them. There's much healthier ways to deal with the PTSD. You don't have to drink yourself to sleep every night, to deal with it. The way I did. You end up in this vicious cycle where you just end up hurting yourself and the people around you, and that's not helping anything. That's not going to make the PTSD get any better. It's not going to make those bad memories become any less bad. So what I wanted to do with the podcast, DriveOn podcast, is to talk to other veterans, talk about their struggles, the things that they went through, and really give some hope to the other people who are out there who might be struggling with their own issues, and just let them know that they're not alone, and that there is a way out that doesn't involve self-destructive behaviors. And there's also other organizations out there. There's nonprofits and companies who are doing a lot of great work for veterans, and they are a lot of times unknown. People just don't know that these things exist. And so I like to talk to them and highlight those organizations to provide alternatives for people who may not be comfortable with, let's say, the VA for counseling or for any other services. There's plenty of other services that are out there, and there's no reason that you can't find something to work for you. And so that's what I like to do on the podcast, talk to those kinds of people and provide hope to those who need it.
That's outstanding. And like you said, that's something that's near and dear to both of our hearts, the veteran transition and their fight, the fight to get away from the demon, the darkness, I like to call it too. And as long as, I guess, guys like yourself and I guess me too, now that I have my show as well, as long as we're getting voices out there and stories out there to maybe show them there is a better way, there is another way to do these things, I think we're all going to come out on the other side a little better.
Yeah, and I hope that, you know, the atmosphere and the attitude in the military community starts to change. It is starting to change, but for the better with regards to mental health. But, you know, when we were in, it was a different ball game. You know, it was a suck it up and deal with it kind of attitude. And, you know, that's not the right way to go. And I think, you know, the better we are at dealing with these problems, the better soldiers will be, the better, spouses and parents will be for our families. Just the better people will be overall. And I think that's a win for not only the military community, but for society in general, because I think the service members who are coming out of the military have a lot to offer. And if we have the best of what they have to offer, then that's only a good thing, I think.
You're definitely right. And a person that comes in is able to make a community impact, a positive community impact, is much better than one that is being a detriment to not just themselves, but their entire family, because they don't know what to do anymore. They don't know what's going on. They don't know why they're home and their friend didn't come home or anything like that. And they blame themselves. So getting out of that hole is very hard for a lot of men and women that come home from war, and getting them back into being productive members of society is a great thing.
Yeah, it is. And that's the goal. We want to make sure that people are, you know, living their best life and living to the best of their abilities. And, you know, if we think about the people, my brother and the thousands of others who were lost in these wars, I don't think you could point to a single one of them who would be like, you know what, you sit home and you sulk and you throw your life away over this because that's what I want for you. I don't think there's a single one of them. And granted, I don't know all of them, but I don't think a single one of them would be like looking down on us saying, yeah, thank God he's pissing his life away, you know? So let's do something to honor their memories and, you know, give honor to their sacrifice and live the best life that we can. You know, they gave us this gift that we're here and, you know, we're able to continue working towards a better life. So let's do that. Let's not piss it away.
Outstanding. And how do people get in touch with you if they want to get you to be on their show, or you just speak maybe to a group of other veterans to say, hey, this is a better way of doing things?
Yeah, absolutely. So the DriveOnPodcast.com is the website for my podcast. You can find a lot of contact information on there, social media links and all that kind of stuff. For the book, if you're interested in the book, you want to grab a copy of the book, you can get it on Amazon. Surviving Son is the name of the book. It's also available on my website, survivingsonbook.com, and again, contact forms all over the place. I'm there as well, so you can reach out, get in touch with me. You know, I'm more than happy to come on and share my story with other groups, other podcasts, other you know, organizations that it would be beneficial to. So you know, please reach out, let me know if I can be of any help to any of your listeners and the groups that they work with.
Outstanding. If you want to hold up your book there so they can actually see the cover, I see it behind your shoulder there.
Grab a copy right here. Here we go. So that's the book. You know, it looks like that on all formats on Amazon, hardcover, paperback, and Kindle formats. So for right now, so I'm working on the audiobook, but that's a slower process than I thought it would be. So that hopefully I'll have that out in a few months, but we'll see how that goes.
Outstanding, Scott. Thanks for coming on the Misfit Nation. I look forward to continuing this conversation next week with you on your show, so we can do this tag team Misfit Nation drive on thing and get more people helped along the way.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks a lot.
Awesome. You know how we do this. Thanks for taking some of your time to spend with us on Misfit Nation. Be sure to hit that subscribe button and share the link as much as possible. If you want to, please become a supporter to help us carry this thing on. We appreciate you. If you know someone that brings that energy, has a great story, is an up-and-comer in the industry of music, in the arts, have them reach out to us on themisfitnation.com. We will get back to them within one day and get them on here so they can share their story with the world. As always, till next time, be humble, stay hungry, and keep hustling. Because we are
Fit Nation.